What is up, YouTube? This is Magician34, and this is The Edge, and today we're going to talk about Ace Specs, one in particular. This is not it. Computer search is kind of a demonstration of what I mean when I'm going to talk about Ace Specs today. For the most part, our decision about our Ace Spec to run is pretty straightforward. Either the deck we're running has a very specific Ace Spec it wants to run, like say Genesect, which wants to run G-Booster pretty much all the time, or maybe if you're running, say, Victini EX, you might want to use Victory Piece as a counter to matchups like Metal or Genesect. Usually speaking, most of us have one of two policies when it comes to Ace Specs and decks that don't have a very specific one they want to run. Either we are a player who doesn't have a lot of resources, in which case we just run whatever Ace Spec we happen to have, or you pretty much run computer search. Maybe Dowsing Machine. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. Computer search gets run a lot, and it's not hard to understand why. Computer search is extremely utilitarian. It just gets you whatever you need. And most decks have a couple of cards they wouldn't mind sending to the discard pile too, so it's a nice bonus. But here's the thing, this is a very generic card, and while it is going to be useful in pretty much any deck, I think sometimes we pick this card too quickly and as too much of a knee-jerk reaction when our deck doesn't necessarily need more searching power than it already has. And sometimes I think we could opt over this card for a card that's going to be a little bit more purposeful for our own deck. So here's where I'm going to throw something a little unusual at you. Of course, you probably read the title, so you already know. I'm talking about Rock Guard today. Rock Guard is an interesting Ace Spec, usually kind of relegated to, those less experienced players. It's just, it's a tool card, and it goes on your Pokemon, of course, and anytime that Pokemon is damaged by an opponent's attack, it puts 6 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon. So basically, they hit you, they take 60 back. Which is a pretty good deal. It'd be nice if you could run more than one copy of it, obviously, but that's true of most Ace Specs. So the weakness of this card, of course, is that your opponent gets to control when and if they get hit by it. And since it only goes on one Pokemon, they can use things like Lysander to kind of play around it. But I think we're all agreed that Lysander is not something that's going to happen every turn, and it's fairly easy for a decent player to manipulate your opponent into pretty much having to take damage from the Rock Guard. So why would you opt for Rock Guard over Computer Search? It's just a random card that might deal some extra damage, right? Well, first of all, we have to consider that some decks already have a lot of search power, which kind of makes computer search less useful. Cards like Corina. And Corina getting a card like Rock Guard could be very useful when you consider that Corina also likes to pair with Pokemon who do a lot of early game damage, like Lucario EX and Landorus EX. Pokemon who could easily turn what would otherwise be fairly light hits and 2, maybe 3 hit KOs at best, could be made much faster. Landorus EX, 2 Hammerheads could easily be enough for KO if your opponent's retaliating into your Rock Guard. And if they're not attacking in, then your Landorus is healthy, which is a good situation for you either way. And even one Rock Guard hit to your opponent is the equivalent of 3 turns worth of hitting your opponent with the Muscle Bound, as far as extra damage offered. Or how about Lucario EX, who with a Rock Guard on him can easily KO just with 1 Missile Jab and 1 Corkscrew Smash. So it's not hard to see these guys being pretty powerful. Remember, these guys aren't just attacking for their base numbers for the most part, they're also going to be using things like Strong Energy and Fighting Stadium to get boosts as well. So this just, essentially, Rock Guard is going to give us faster KOs, which could be advantageous for some Pokemon especially, such as Yveltal EX. Yveltal EX's Evil Ball is definitely his signature move, but he often falls just a little bit disappointingly short of his KOs, usually dealing that tantalizing 120 or so in damage. Well, 120 plus 60 is KO, meaning that this guy with a significant Evil Ball, or say an Evil Ball plus Hypnotoxic Laser or Verbank Laser, could easily make Rock Guard KOs, meaning your opponent is forced to make very difficult decisions like get knocked out at the end of their own turn, keep in mind, giving you a free hit on whatever comes in to replace it, or not KOing and instead retreating out, giving you a chance later to Lysander for a KO, which could be a pretty powerful tactic, essentially neutralizing your opponent's Pokemon one way or the other. And speaking of things you see in a dark deck, how about Darkrai EX? His Night Spear is 90, and Rock Guard offers 60. And that Rock Guard doesn't necessarily even have to be on Darkrai. That's 150. But if you consider even one Night Spear hit to the Pokemon on the bench, that's an extra 30, which is 180, which is a KO on any EX that isn't Mega. And let's also remember that Rock Guard deters your opponent from attacking. So it's a great card to attach to a Pokemon that wants to fill, many times, a more utilitarian role like Darkrai does, where he doesn't really want to get attacked. Instead, he wants to sit on the bench and support with his ability. So giving him a Rock Guard can be a great way to encourage your opponent to leave him alone so that he can keep supporting all your Pokemon. And of course, there are other Pokemon like Seismitoad EX who want to play a long, grinding attrition match. And it's going to take a lot of attacks to end up taking him down because he slows your opponent down so much. Putting Rock Guard on Seismitoad is an excellent way for you to essentially put your opponent into that much tighter a situation. Seismitoad's especially good with Rock Guard because you can't Startling Megaphone it off of him. And they either get to suffer Quaking Punches, or they get to knock themselves out faster with Rock Guard. So it's kind of a lose-lose for your opponent in that situation. So, while I encourage you to, of course, think very carefully about all your decisions when it comes to adding in your Ace Spec for your deck, I especially want you to consider every Ace Spec, even the ones that are usually assumed to be bad, like, say, Gold Potion, or, like today, Rock Guard. So until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and check out my channel for more Pokemon content.